Hey, party podcast people, I wanted to tell you guys about a really great podcast I just listened to on the James Altucher podcast with Cal Fussman. I first found out about Cal from the Tim Ferriss podcast, and this guy is an incredible storyteller, an incredible interviewer, one of the world's most accomplished interviewers of all time. He writes an article for Esquire called What I've Learned, where he interviews important people around the world from all different walks of life to kind of share what they have learned and pass along messages to future generations. I mean, this guy has interviewed Muhammad Ali, Jeff Bezos, Mikhail Gorbachev, people in politics. So he's kind of an older guy, you know, I think he's like 61, so it's kind of interesting to hear him and James kind of converse about like the good old days and the effects of social media. And he asked this question of, have we lost the art of conversation? Because in a lot of modern media, it could be really prepared for a 3-minute clip or a 3-minute interview, or I mean, if you watch The Daily Show or any of these late night shows, essentially the guest has a rough framework of what they're going to talk about, and the interviewer knows what they're going to be asking, but it's not a real conversation. And one of the things I love the most about this podcast is he talks about how when he was younger, he was basically surviving off of his ability to ask questions. I thought it was really interesting that he would travel the world living the nomadic life. He'd have no destination, no plan, and he would get on a bus and start to analyze the different faces, because he would basically figure someone on this bus is going to have to take me into their home for me to have a place to sleep tonight, because I can't afford a hotel and a hostel or whatever else. And so he's traveling the world by bus, and for example, one of the great questions that he asks, he would find a grandmother, maybe a Russian grandmother, and say, you know, what is it that makes a perfect goulash? Or what is it that makes a perfect stew? And then the grandma has a lot of opinions on this question. And next thing you know, she's saying, hey, why don't you come on over for dinner? And people are throwing parties, and he's meeting people from all these different cultures. So the episode here is called The Art of a Great Question. And this guy definitely knows a thing or two about asking good questions. He actually has breakfast every morning with Larry King, one of the great question askers of all time, because he was doing a biography of Larry King, and they started getting together for breakfast, and that tradition just kind of went on afterwards. So this is really relevant to me because working in media, asking the right questions can be really important and has led to some of my success. My biggest takeaway from this podcast episode, I think, is to ask questions that really drive to the heart of your interviewer as opposed to the head. Everyone likes to often ask famous people, important people, the same questions about their career trajectory. But for example, when he was interviewing Mikhail Gorbachev, he asked him a very interesting question. He asked him, what is the most important lesson your father ever taught you? And that was a question that really broke down a lot of barriers. And he explained during the process that after he answered this question, after he dove back into his childhood, he really was like hungry for more good questions, because everyone else has these like boring boilerplate questions. And the other important thing is that it's not just the questions themselves, it's how you ask the questions and in what order, and how you're building the rapport before you hit record on your audio or video. So at one point in the interview, James Altucher suggests to him, you should write a book that's like Cal Fussman's 100 Best Questions. And he says that, you know, I can't just give you the questions and now you're going to become a great interviewer. There has to be sincerity, there has to be genuine curiosity to really elicit the best reactions out of your interviewee. Now, This is important to me, obviously, because I make videos, but I think it's important for everyone to understand kind of the art of question asking and the importance of asking good questions. Whether or not you're trying to land a job interview, whether or not you're trying to market your product or grow your business, maybe you want to build stronger relationships or find a romantic partner. Understanding how to ask great questions is one of the most important skills I think all people can develop. So I highly recommend you check out the James Altucher podcast with Cal Fussman. Another great thing about this podcast is I learned that Cal Fussman has his own podcast. And so I'm going to listen to that next because he's got an interview with Seth Godin. All right, you guys, I hope you found this interesting. Go check out the podcast, keep your earbuds in, and I'll catch you on the next episode.